Welcome back, legends. I hope you're all fantastic and I hope you're all having an awesome new year so far. Welcome to another installment of Friday Q&A. As always, thank you so much for this week's questions, and a reminder that if there's a question you would like me to answer on next week's Friday Q&A, just put it in the comment section below. As always, if you want to support the channel directly, there are links to my Patreon and the music I make in the video description, as well as a link and invite to the Discord server where you can come and hang out and chat more. Let's get into this week's questions. Do I have any New Year's resolutions? Basically, every time the new year comes around, and this is going to sound super corny and just cheesy, but I think every year that comes around, it's a good time to remind yourself, maybe be a little bit kinder to people, be a little bit kinder to yourself, be a little bit more patient with people and a little bit more patient with yourself. And outside of that, I don't think there's too much more you can do. You know, there's so many things in the world out of our control that really the only way that you can have any control is maybe to control your reaction to the things that you can't control, something like that anyway. So I imagine this year, as much as any other year, is going to be full of challenges for everybody out there. So I always just try to refresh myself on those things and, you know, just try to be kind to yourself and everybody else. Speaking of New Year's stuff, will I put up any more footage of our New Year's show that we did? We got super duper lucky here in Perth where there were some restrictions brought in related to COVID, of course, just like everywhere else in the world, that applied to a few regions in Western Australia and didn't apply to some regions. And we happened to be playing just outside where those restrictions applied. So we were still able to do our New Year's show safely, and it went off really, really well. Great crowd, a great little spot down there, and yeah, just very fortunate to be able to cap off the end of the year and the start of a new year by playing a gig, playing music that we like. And I took potato cam footage of that with my GoPro, as I always tend to do, and I have already put some of that up on my Patreon for anybody who wants to go and check that out and sign up. You can become a patron for only $1 and watch a bunch of bonus content that I post up there. And also because the footage isn't the best quality in terms of the actual footage and the sound as well. So, you know, I've shared some little snippets of it on here. I might share some more in the future, but for now, if you want to go watch some highlights, you can go check it out on the Patreon. And another one related to that show, I was asked if I was still using my Fractal Rig for that show. I was. If you go and watch my recent video, I did one called Useful Stuff Volume 2, where I just showed you what my live rig is. I actually used the FM3 for that rig because it pops into a really nice small case. We had to drive a few hours, so it fits the FM3, my expression pedal on a pedal board, Ryan's Sans amp and his tuner, and all our cables that we need to do a show in a really lovely rolling case. So go and watch my Useful Stuff video and you can see the little rig there. While we're talking about Fractal stuff, is there a course, either paid or free, that I would recommend if you want to, I guess, master that ecosystem? If you haven't already checked out all of my tutorials, I'm assuming you have, but you want something else or you want another perspective on it, I cannot recommend Cooper Carter's Axe-Fx Masterclass more highly. Cooper's a friend of mine, great dude, amazing player, fantastic instructor, and that is a much more kind of structured course than the sort of videos I do, which normally come from me getting super inspired about some particular feature in the Axe-Fx, spending a bunch of time playing around with it myself, and then making a video about it and just kind of sharing that, which is, I think, why I always come across as so enthusiastic with it, because I genuinely am. Like, if you watch my recent video where I did the 6-part multi-band split, I was playing around with that all day and loving it, and it always happens where it's like, I should make a video about this and share it with people because I think a bunch of people would dig that. But if you want a really structured step-by-step course on really learning how to use that, go and check out Cooper's Masterclass. Look within, it's a sin. Do you like what you see? So this one comes from my buddy Rutger. How about a spicy take on the following? Are hardware amp modelers simply just a stopgap solution on the road to everything eventually just being plug-in based on something like a laptop? And there's already people, of course, doing that, both in the guitar sphere where you're using an interface and plugins and going direct to front of house, or using the plugin into a power amp and a cab. That's totally feasible and possible at the moment if you've got a good enough laptop and a good enough interface, and really doesn't take that much investment to get a good enough interface or laptop. You've also got the flip side where a lot of pro level, front of house desks just run stuff like Waves plugins on them. So you've got an entire desk, running 40 plus channels at least. And then you've got plugin chains to do all the different processing for different instruments, as well as all the bus processing and the master processing on there. So I'm sure if it's not already happening, that there are people out there who just have their live show with plugins all running where all the instruments feed into an interface, they get processed, and you just say to the front of house person, here is a stereo pair of XLRs, just run them to front of house. We're doing the rest, all the MIDI automation, all the effect automation and stuff like that, and you literally just play the parts. One thing though that I think is handy about having dedicated hardware solutions is the modularity of it, where if you're using, say, a dedicated amp modeler, and let's say you were in a 5-piece band where the bass player was running something like a Sans amp or a dark glass pedal straight to front of house, the two guitar players were using Axifexes or Helixes or quad cortexes, or whatever the plural of those things ending in X is, Helici, quad cortexi. That sounds like some kind of cream you have to rub on yourself. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Let's say you had a setup like that. One cool thing is that, well, maybe not a cool thing, but something that can happen is, say one of your devices stops working, you can just have a backup for that particular device. If you're running everything off a single device and something goes wrong and the master unit goes down, I guess you could have a backup master unit, but then you're going to probably have to either be running that in parallel and immediately switch to it, which means you probably need a second backup, or there's going to be that associated boot time with it. But at the same time, it's probably going to be that associated boot time with it anyway if your Sans amp stops working and you got to swap it out or something like that. So yeah, the modularity thing and having a dedicated processor that you can take home and put on your desk and tweak all your sounds in without having to be like at the rehearsal room or at the studio with everybody else to do it is one thing that is very appealing to it. The appealing thing about the integrated approach, which, is just definitely going to be the way forward for so many things, because it really is the way things are happening at the moment. If you look at bands playing arenas, everybody's got, a couple of Axifexes with backups, and that all just goes to the desk and they dial everything in. And you have that kind of autopilot level where you still need that human touch to fix problems, but the show is mostly on wheels. So I'm very interested. What do other people think? Is that something that would appeal to anybody, the idea of just your whole band's show being on a laptop? Or are there people out there watching this who are already doing that? And if you are doing it, let me know how you're doing it, because I want to know more. Showtime, cover your eyes, I can take it from here. What do I think of veteran artists selling their back catalogs? This seems to be a thing that's happening a little bit more as time goes on, which definitely makes sense, because as time goes on, people get older. Maybe they realize they're not going to live forever. Maybe they realize they don't want to go out and tour forever. So selling off their entire back catalog and getting some of that sweet, sweet moolah is basically the way to go about it. And why not? If you're somebody who is considered a heritage act and you've written songs that have defined generations and you just want to get what's yours while you can still kind of go out and have air in your lungs and enjoy stuff, then I guess you can't really fault people, especially considering we're living in a world where money is God. It doesn't seem really that much worse than any of the other things that happen with late stage capitalism. But at the same time, you do kind of have people who have spent a considerable portion of their career complaining about the industry and how it screws over artists, and then that artists have to have integrity and so many other things doing this. So yeah, I would tend to look at it through a more cynical lens where it's just like, they're just cashing in while they still have time on Earth. But other than that, I don't have a very nuanced take on it because it doesn't really affect me that much. I'm sure I am still going to hear those same 40 classic rock songs on the local radio station until the day I die on classic rock radios. So, it's not going to make that much of a change to me or any of the people in my life. And for people like me who do try to write new music, in whatever kind of sense you consider it new, fill in the hot take there with whatever you want. Again, it's not going to make that much of a difference to me because the entire money-making model has been shattered. So yeah, it probably is just a case of the rich get richer and the people at the bottom, who are now the majority of the people trying to go out and make music, not going to really improve their lives that much at all. So yeah, I don't know. What do you all think about veteran artists selling off their back catalog? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it just one of those kind of neutral things where you really just couldn't care? Let me know in the comments. I'm the one you waited for. If I could pick 3 shredders from the 80s, like I went back in time and I could just walk up to, say, Shredder A, Shredder B, and Shredder C on the street, somewhere in California, I'm guessing, because that's where all the shredders were, right? Who would I want to hang out and trade licks with? The first person that comes to mind is definitely Paul Gilbert, because I've just made a career out of playing Paul Gilbert licks poorly. So I would love to take that opportunity to hang out with Paul and just see him at peak alternate picking god status and hopefully get even more inspired, but maybe get a little bit discouraged because Paul is still so amazing. John Sykes. I don't know if I'd actually want to meet John Sykes though, because John Sykes just oozes rock star and I don't really ooze rock star. I feel like John would just have way too much charisma and cred for me, but it would be amazing to just watch him do his thing again when he was at like peak John Sykes level, late 80s, around that Whitesnake album, around that first Blue Murder album. Maybe not trade licks with, but just get to see a show. And I'm sure there's some people watching this video who did get to see those shows. If so, let me know how amazing it was. And then I might go for a slightly outside one here, and I'm going to go with Michael Lee Firkins, because I think Michael was doing some stuff that was way ahead of the curve. If you look at how a lot of, the so-called Instagram generation of players play, where there's a lot of these kind of slidey things and whammy bar things and insane legato things that they do. Michael was doing that back in the late 80s. So I'd love to kind of see what was going on in their head and how they were coming up with certain approaches, especially like the fake slide stuff, which still stacks up today. Really, really interesting. Either that or, of course, Marty Friedman and Jason Becker. That would be just stunning. So I named 5 players there. This is not unlike me. I'm going to go maximal and say that that's okay, though. Thanks for the question. One last question to round out this week's Q&A, and it relates to writing lyrics and how we do it in Ragdoll. Generally, not only the 3 of us, but the 3 of us and our longtime producer and friend of the channel, Mr. Troy Nababan, will all have some input when it comes to lyrics. If I'm writing a piece of music, though, often the general mood of the piece of music will suggest some lyrical content to me. And whether it's a vague theme or whether it's an event that's happened in my life, or it's, I've seen a cool movie, or I've been listening to a history podcast, or I've been checking Facebook and wanting to pull all my hair out, those kind of things, there's going to be something that plays into that. There's just background stuff happening all the time. Life is happening. I'm writing a piece of music, and it's going to play into that. And we'll bounce these ideas around. A lot of the time, I will try and flesh out a melody and a basic lyric idea, and Ryan will come in. And if he likes it, then we'll roll with that. If he doesn't like it, then he'll go away and work on something. But a lot of the time, we'll kind of agree on a theme. Like the song should be about this, or the chorus should do this melodically or rhythmically. So we all play around with those kind of ideas. But if you're struggling to write lyrics for a song, you can actually just practice writing stuff that has nothing to do with your song. So a kind of cool little trick that I picked up along the way, and this is like a classic songwriting formula. Try this and just try to write verses that tell a little story. So where were you? Who were you with? What happened? How did it make you feel? They're the 4 lines. And again, so where were you? You can kind of set the scene. Who were you with? You're either with a person, a bunch of people, or you're all alone. What happened? This is the juicy, meaty part of the verse. And then how did it make you feel? So you're going to get that emotional aspect into it there. And you can just sit down and write verses and use that. And don't even think about the melody. Don't even think about the song that you're trying to write. If you're going to write lyrics, you have to practice writing lyrics, and get a notebook and just fill it with all your lyrics. And I always like to think that everybody has about 200 utterly garbage songs in them. So go ahead and write those utterly garbage songs, get them out of your system, and then you're going to be on to the good stuff. And that's something that I've been doing all my life. I still have notebooks from when I was 15 years old that when I'm feeling brave enough, I will look at and just look at these, what to me seem very, very basic song ideas. And, you know, yes, I cringe because I was 15 and I'm not 15 anymore. And the further away from 15 you are, the harder it is to kind of empathize with your 15-year-old self. But that's just something that I've done and I continue to do regularly. And like anything, whether it is learning a new musical idea or writing music or writing lyrics, you just have to make a habit of it. So try that little trick. And, you know, if anybody wants to suggest some lyrics in the comment section below, go nuts. Give me all your bad poetry, or maybe all your great poetry as well. And that's all I have to say about lyric writing for now. Hopefully it pumps you up to want to go and actually do it, and having some kind of process like that. I know it doesn't seem kind of sexy or magical like that, but, you know, like anything else, it's sometimes just about grinding it out, and there's as much craft to it as there is art about it. That is it for this week's Q&A. As always, thank you all so much for this week's questions. Have a fantastic week. If you've got a question you would like me to answer on next week's video, put it in the comment section below. Links to support the channel, as always, are in the video description. I'll see you next time. Thank you.